It will shortly become obvious how much of a From Software fanboy I really am. This isn't to say that my judgment isn't clouded by feelings of a weird love for an entire company in Japan, although it definitely is. It's more to say that through no outside influence, From Software games have connected with me and made an impression in a way that no other developer or game series has been able to match. When I was 13, I used to go shopping with my parents because that's just what 13-year-olds do, and once in a while I had the opportunity to try and convince them to buy me a video game. One day I saw a game with a sick-ass cover on the front that looked like a cool ghost knight dude. The shop I used to go to was pretty niche and had a lot of Japanese games not really aimed at most people, and after a lot of begging I convinced my parents to buy me a little known game called Demon's Souls. This game fucking broke me as a kid. The world was amazing and the gameplay was like nothing I'd ever played, with its online elements and inventing R1 to attack. Fuck me, it was brutal. These days I understand a lot more about game design and how to work around challenges and optimize builds, but when I was 13 I just had no fucking clue. I vividly remember having a full-on breakdown because I could just not beat the Tower Knight, like throwing controller crying, and my dad had to give me a dad talk about how taking a break always helps. I've heard a lot of people talk about that method since, but I reluctantly took a break, came back the next day with my other controller and beat that shiny bastard first try. Long story short, my PS3 got the yellow light of death before I could complete it, and I never picked it up again. It's so easy now to see individual games as continuity of a developer's efforts, especially with a company like From, but I picked up Bloodborne in 2015 just because it looked badass and I was depressed. After about 1,000 hours in that, I put another 1,000 into Dark Souls 3 and some more into Dark Souls, and then Sekiro came along. I've only played Sekiro once. I'm thinking about picking it up again to get the platinum, but the build diversity in PvP is the only reason I've racked up so much playtime in the other two. Playing Sekiro was like experiencing Demon's Souls all over again. Sekiro was hard, not in a frustrating way, but in the exact same way everyone's first From Software game is hard. It seems like a completely new type of game where the weakest enemies can murder you if you lose focus for even a moment. It's almost as if all my time playing previous entries actually made me worse at the game. As I slowly got accustomed to the new style of combat, I felt only one thing: pure joy. The first time you break an enemy's posture by parrying them rather than attacking their block is an amazing experience. The same the first time you pull off a Mikiri counter. Both of these feats always stay fresh, and the more I played this crazy parry game, the more I realised the combat was just perfect. My thought process is basically this: all games basically offer some kind of interaction with the world, and a melee combat system is interacting by fighting shit. Well, that interaction needs to have variety to allow you to make meaningful choices, and not just be press attack to win. And most games do this by giving you a diverse range of moves, with slow heavy attacks, quick light attacks, special attacks, and usually a block, parry and dodge. I think this works really well, especially in fighting or PvP type games, where like chess or rock paper scissors, every move has strengths and weaknesses and counters. The issue Sekiro highlights is that in a PvE environment, almost always the effective way to defeat an enemy is offensive moves. Parries are good, but they're usually optional as a high risk, high reward strat, and the AI that you're fighting isn't usually designed to react to different attacks in meaningful ways. Even with amazing weapons like the Leviathan Axe, the Whirligig Saw, and 2B's katanas, you can have a lot of options, but when it comes down to it, they're all just different ways of reducing an enemy's health bar to 0. I know that's an oversimplification, but in all of these games, especially fighting bosses, it feels like you can complete the entire game by just mashing R1. Those choices are there, but they rarely feel like you've made a good decision by using one attack over another. It sometimes feels like I'm just wailing on a big grey cube with a health bar. The bosses don't dodge or parry or quickly attack me while I'm charging up a heavy attack like a real person would, and if the different animations weren't there, every attack would feel bland. I've got a little test. Everyone who has played a Souls game raise their hand. Right, and now if you've ever used a jumping attack to kill an enemy in PvE, keep your hand raised. Do you have your hand up? I don't. I've used it plenty in PvP, and on some weapons it's an amazing attack, but there's just no need in PvE. I even played through the entirety of Bloodborne without knowing what parrying was, and I still beat the game. In Sekiro, the entire system is flipped on its head. Instead of interacting with the world through offensive moves, you primarily interact with it defensively. This instantly gives so much more dynamism to every fight, especially boss fights. You've always been able to dodge and block, but now instead of just making sure you're either out of the way in attack, or blocking it, you need to know exactly what attack it is, and exactly what attacks follow it, because if you don't parry at the right time you are dead. And you can't just parry every attack, sweeps and grabs are unparryable, and to fight effectively need to be jumped over and dodged respectively. Thrusts can be parried, but it is much more beneficial to actually dodge towards them, to Mikiri counter. A lot of games have unblockable attacks, but this just leads to the most viable strategy being rolling away from everything. In Sekiro, the dodge is severely limited relative to previous games, and to succeed against tougher bosses, you must use the right counter at the right time. It makes fights feel like real sword fights rather than dodge an attack, wail on an enemy, and then dodge an attack, and repeat. Balancing this out, your attack variety is severely limited, and enemies will actively block your attacks over and over, not allowing you to get hit in. The prosthetic arm actually allows for interesting choices, as enemies react differently to different attachments, and some will make certain enemies far easier if you figure out their weakness. The amazing posture system allows this to be possible, and it even makes it possible to beat bosses by parrying alone. It's been said before, and I'll say it again. Sekiro at its core is a rhythm game. Even if you stripped away all the enemies and flashy moves and animations, you'd end up with a game like the classic Impossible Game or its modern contemporaries Geometry Dash or Thumper. These games, even with their relatively basic styles, are very engaging and fun to play. Every boss is like a different level, and by interacting so directly with their moveset, they each have such a unique, memorable personality. Thank you Sekiro for being fucking awesome, thank you Glock Saint Ishin for being the greatest boss ever, and thank you for watching.